What's going on, mental fans? Today, we have Tom Mullins.
Hi, everybody.
Teacher and community activist in Cohoes, Waterford, Green Island, New York.
Yes.
That area.
Yes.
Super excited to have you on today.
Well, thank you. It's nice to be here.
Yeah. I met Tom about 5 years ago on the Champlain Trail. I was trying to walk my weight off. I've never done it yet. I'm trying still. I'm hoping that I can do it this year with my new puppy, but we'll see. And Tom has been a really good guy to go walking with, and Tom has got some of the greatest stories I've ever heard, and I
appreciate that.
Wow,
and I'm not even kidding. He's a fantastic storyteller, but more than that, he's a great human, and I wanted everybody to meet him. That's why he's here today.
And John, I restored my throwing arm through throwing those balls to your dogs all those years too.
Right.
got my arm back in shape.
See, everybody wins.
Yeah.
Well, Tom, give us a lowdown on what you've been doing. What's going on lately?
Lately, well, let me give you a full update.
I was gonna say, why don't you start right on the beginning?
Yeah, I want to start with an event that happened in my life that I feel has kind of propelled me into my activism. It was a near death experience. I was meeting a friend I was supposed to meet him on an island in the Hudson River, which required us walking across the ice. I was supposed to meet him I was 12 years old at the time. I was supposed to meet him at 3 o'clock. And I get down, start walking out on the ice, and I yell his name. He didn't respond. So I said, he's probably hiding on me. So I kept walking across. I fell through the ice. And I was all alone. There was nobody around. And I could not touch the bottom of the riverbed. So I knew I was in trouble, deep trouble. And I had all my winter clothes on. My boots were starting to fill up with water. And all of a sudden I got very calm. And I just said, I have to reach for the ice and get myself up on the ice, thinking it's never going to hold me because I just fell through it. It was still the edge. And I grabbed it and it held, and I pulled myself up on the ice, and I slid across about 3 feet, and I ran as fast as I could to the shore. I got home, I threw my clothes in the washer. When I got home, of course, I got caught. My mother caught me. I got grounded for that because she didn't believe I fell into the skating rink. She says, no, clothes don't stink when you fall into the skating rink. So I got grounded for a week. But it left me with a question, and the question was, why did I survive this? I should have been gone. Why did I survive this? And the question wasn't there all the time, but it came back to me at different times during my life. Almost like what a soldier will tell you when he comes back from war. He'll say, why did all those guys die around me, and yet I'm here? And the answer I gave the soldier was, well, you're here to be the voice for those that didn't come back. Well, my answer came over time and over just doing different things with my life. And I came to the point sometime later in life where I felt my purpose in life was to just try to make a difference every day, whether it be to somebody in the hallway, to my students, to adults I was interacting with my community. And that kind of became my mantra, if you want to think of it that way, as a mantra. How do I make a difference every day? How do I look at the world and see things that maybe need to be changed, and then say, okay, what can I do working with others to make positive change happen? So I always go back to that near-death experience. I mean, I could have been going at 12 and we wouldn't be here talking today.
Right.
And none of the things that have happened in my life would have happened. It would have been ended at that point. And so that propelled me into some volunteer experiences that I did when I was teaching. And my other theme is, if you want to make a difference, do some volunteering, because it's free, it's open-ended. If you have an idea, see, and you want to change something, see if you can make something happen. But even though the word idea starts with the letter I try not to use the word I about me too much. The implementation of an idea is always a we proposition. You got to get other people involved with you to make the idea go forward. So that gave me my sense of purpose. That near-death experience gave me that sense of purpose. And then as my life unfolded in my career in teaching in community activism, I got to look at the world a little differently and see opportunities in things that were around me and say, well, you know what? Maybe this needs a change. And so I started my own classroom because, as you know, people don't give a lot of thought to culture in workplaces, workplace culture. What's the culture of your workplace? So I started to think about this with my class as I was teaching them. And I said, you know what? If I'm going to change the culture of my class, I got to change the way I got to change the words we use in class and create a culture around. So the first word I said to the kids every year when I met them for the first time is I said, you can always ask me why. Whatever we're doing in class, ask me why I'm doing that, and I'll give you an answer. Because kids sometimes when they ask questions in class, it's like, it might not be handled quite the way what are you asking me that for? It's because I told you to do it. No. Ask me. If we're doing a reason, ask me why we're doing it. I found that when I explained the why to kids, that they understood everything I was doing in the class. And then I was fortunate enough to, in my early teaching career, both at St. Peter's and in Cohoes, I worked with at-risk kids. At-risk kids are usually those challenging, hard to handle, or out of school a lot, fail a lot. And I said, well, they failed in the traditional school. How can I make my class a place where they can tap into things and succeed? And then I remember reading a book by John Wooden, the great coach at UCLA. Mm-hmm. And he said, he defined success like this. He says, success is the peace of mind you have knowing that whatever your endeavor is, I'm straying from the quote a bit, whatever endeavor you're in, that you did the very best you could to make a difference. And that philosophy stayed with me too.
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful way of thinking.
I didn't have to quote exactly, but it's peace of mind. Because I strove for peace of mind my whole life, but I was put in challenging situations. The second thing I did in my class to change the culture is I said, kids, we can't use the word problem here. We're going to substitute a different word for problem. We're going to say challenge. Because I knew this from psychology, that kids like to be challenged. People like to be challenged in their workplace. Adult people like to be challenged. So we did not use the word problem in my class. And then for homework, I never called it homework. I called it an opportunity for success. And what I found out from my kids was that they usually always did their homework because I would say, why do you want to turn down an opportunity for success? Do you want to succeed?
That's really interesting.
Then practice, yeah. And they bought into it. They bought into it. So I taught at St. Peter's Academy in Troy. It was an inner city school in Troy. I was the first teacher in 4 years at the 6th grade level to survive a full year in the 6th grade. Because these kids were just used to, hey, if we don't like you, we're going to run you right out of here. And I said, well, I'm staying. I got to learn from this. And I stayed. And they were surprised I stayed. But then I said, you can care about people without being soft. But you can be demanding too. But when they know you care, they're more than likely to follow you into whatever they're doing. And one of the students that come out of my class, and this wasn't a direct thing, I had an Olympic athlete that came out of my class as a 6th grader. I used to take the kids running on a track. And she turned out she was an 880. She ran the 880 meters. And she was in the 84 and 88 Olympics. But wow. She came back to me one time and she said to me, thank you for pushing me when you did. Because she said, I didn't want to be pushed, but you pushed me. And that was an interesting, because I mean, how many teachers can say they ever taught an Olympic athlete?
Yeah, well, you got to see the results of some of the psychology that you were forming to help those kids. Right?
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely.
That's a hard work. Like that's not something you fall into. That's a hard working thing.
Yes.
Just become an Olympic athlete. Like
absolutely. And she got an opportunity to go to college as a result of it. The only thing was, though, I was going to call a teacher, or the track teacher or track coach at Lansingburg, where she transferred to. Mm-hmm. I'm glad I didn't make the call, because I had her pegged for the long jump, because she was raw. She could do 19 feet. But when I watched her run against the boys, her stride was so long. She ate up, where boys had to take 4 and 8 steps to accomplish, a yard or a yard and a half. She could do it in like 2 running strides. And so she got picked up by an organization called the Gazelle International Track Club. She traveled the world in high school, and then got a scholarship to the University of Tennessee. So that was exciting to see somebody benefit from something you were doing.
Yeah.
You know, because our classroom culture was we had to work hard. We had to work hard to get to where we wanted to go. Teaching propelled me into other things. You know, working in some tough neighborhoods. You know, you had to make sure kids got home at night. You had to make sure they did their homework. You had to make sure, you know, they weren't out running the streets. I mean, you couldn't supervise that all the time. But we appealed to the sense of responsibility. You know, that if you wanted to better yourself, you had to buy in. You had to buy in. You had to buy into people that cared about you. You had to figure out who cares about you first. But once you bought in, where can that person, in terms of what they're teaching you, where can they take you, or at least open up a window for you to look out and say, hey, these are my possibilities now. That gave me excitement as a teacher, you know, to do that. And then when I went to Cohoes High, they asked me to head this organization called SAD. It was Students Against Drunk Driving. It was formed in 1982. Well, I came to the high school in 88, or 87, I should say. And a teacher came to me and said, hey, the advisor just retired. We can't have a SAD club without an advisor. I said, yeah, but I'm not a joiner. I'm not like that. But the kids asked me 3 times. The third time I said yes. And working with SAD changed my life, because it got me into anti-DWI campaigns, Stop DWI, they call them now. My at-risk students, some who had issues with drugs or pregnancy, I had to network with other organizations to support them, because you don't have those support networks within your school. I had to go outside. And so that opened me up to, you know, what family court was like, what it's like to go out into a community and deliver a message that, hey, you know, we don't want our kids doing drugs, and we want to educate them, and anything that got in the way of education, we couldn't tolerate. So kids had to come to school straight. They had to get counseling if they needed it, which was never easy. So it brought me into a lot of areas that I never dreamed I'd be going just by being a teacher. But I did. And that fueled me. That fueled my connection between the school and the community, because the school had to be part of the community, and therefore what's happening in the community happens in school. Vice versa, what happens in school happens in the community too. So we had to look up, and that fueled getting our kids out into the streets to do knock on doors, talk about crime prevention, talk about, you know, how do we get drugs out of our community. So the kids put themselves on the front line. I went there along with them. And we did a lot of community work. And that really helped me in the community, because it gave me credibility.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite things was when the kids used to come over on basketball night, when we were playing games in high school. I'd have these elementary kids that would come over, and I had this idea. I had to come up with an expression for fighting drunken driving. And I come up with it one day. I was licking a lollipop, and I said, lollipop and a sticker. Let's lick DWI. So I'd have the elementary kids come over. They meet me in the fag room. They put together 400 lollipops for me with the Let's Lick DWI, and we'd walk them into the stands. And then, you know, 4th graders going up to adults and say, let's lick DWI. What's that mean? And they'd explain it. And I said, wow, this is exciting, getting kids involved on adult driving issues.
Yeah.
So one thing just led to another. Of course, I know you looked at my resume. You would say, at one hand, it's all over the place in terms of activities I did, but it was always an issue in school or the community that led me to say, hey, let's put together some kids or some adults. Let's get out there. Let's get outside the school. Let's get into the community and see if we can create some change. And I've been doing that ever since.
Yeah, it's too easy to sit in a classroom and then just let everything stop at the door, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because everything from the community comes into your classroom.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's drug use, whether it's reckless driving, it all impacts one versus the other. Because you may think you're separate entities, and to a certain extent you are, but the threads that connect the both of you
Well, we're all in the same place. Like, we're all here. Like, I don't
Yeah.
have any kids. I don't have anyone at school, but I'm part of the community. There's a school 100 feet down the road from me, basically. Like, we're all on this earth together. Like, we're all doing the same thing.
Good point. And I would ask you this: what would be wrong with kids getting? Let me just explain something to you. I used to sit on this wall, and it was at the intersection of where Harmony Hill empties out and our high school empties out, the same intersection. So cars coming in or out. And I was looking at how many people, I was counting the cars actually, and how many people were in the cars. And when I got done counting, in the 20 minutes I sat out there, I had an audience of 1,200 people. And I started thinking about that, and I said, who has an audience of 1,200 people? The governor doesn't have an audience of. I got 1,200 people every 20 minutes between 2:30 and 2:50 in the afternoon come by. So whatever message I get out there on that wall with, and if I can get kids to join me, I'm hitting 1,200 people a day.
That's quite a bit.
So here's one of our signs.
Oh, cool.
Make a difference every day. And when kids saw this, they go, I can make a difference too? Yeah, because people are reading that sign. Or this one. And this one is especially appropriate today with all the civil unrest that we have. Dignity first. Think about this. If you're going to argue with somebody, there's two ways you can argue. You can get mad at one another. You throw stones at one another. But why can't we have a civil argument about things we disagree with and just disagree professionally? So what I try to get kids to think about with the sign is, before you get in somebody's face to say something negative, think about that person has dignity, and so do you. Do I really want to hurt this person, or can I politely and professionally agree with them? So I stand with these signs out in front of my school every day. And sometimes you think, oh, nobody's looking. Nobody's looking at me. Are you really noticing anything here? Well, one day a lady pulled up in a school bus. I didn't have my sign out there. She opens the door. She says, where's your sign? She says, my kids read your sign every day on the bus. I said, no, they don't. They don't even look at me. No, they're reading your signs every day, because when you don't have one, they're upset. What's the message today? They're looking for it. And then the idea came, those electric message boards you have in front of every school? Do you see how underutilized they are?
Yeah, it's always the same message. Yeah.
Why not put messages like this on these boards? People are driving by them 24/7. The board may not be on for 24/7, but they're on a good portion of the day. So we started using the message boards to get our message out, whether it be DWI, whether it be anti-drug, whether it be something as simple as this. Make each day your masterpiece. By the way, John Wooden, who I referred to, the big great basketball coach, that's what he believed in practice. He's going to make every practice a masterpiece, because if you do, the game you play as a result of that practice will be a masterpiece as well. He says the only thing that's not guaranteed is the final score. You may not win all your games. You may lose some. But if your kids are doing the very best they can every time out and they're prepared, you've done everything you can. Well, that's a life lesson too.
Well, it's huge.
Preparation
on so many
for
different
life.
levels. Yeah.
Yeah. So now you mentioned veterans. My story there is kind of an upbeat story too. I had a friend come to me 5 years ago, and he says he's a guy who's has a voracious appetite for history, especially as it relates to newspapers. He goes back 80 years into newspapers, reads articles about veterans. He's Tom, we got a guy in that you graduated from high school with, but he didn't graduate. I'll bet you didn't know it. Who's the guy? And he told me. No, I think he graduated. No, he didn't. A lot of guys in the 60s in Green Island dropped out of school to go to the Vietnam War. Mm-hmm. They enlisted because in the early 60s, you were not required to have either a diploma or a GED to get in the service. That all changed later on, but up until 1968. So these guys were dropping out of school, but they were recruiting one another in the hallways and saying, well, let's go to a recruiting office together, right? So he went in to see if he could get an honorary diploma for somebody. And he was treated as if they didn't want him there. So he comes to me and he says, hey, I wasn't very welcome there today. You're a smoothie. Can you go in? And so I go in, I have a conversation with the superintendent. She's done. We'll do it. We'll give him the diploma. I said, nope, you got to make me jump through hoops. You're a school. You're supposed to make me jump through hoops. Let's get a protocol here, a procedure, so that if I happen to pass away and somebody else wants to do this, they know what the procedure is. So we come up with something very quick. Well, then we tried to put through a second guy. And she says, well, Tom, he never went to school here. And I says, well, yeah, but he still lived here for 49 years, you know. Why not? Well, that caused me to call state ed and say, hey, is there a way we can get a guy that never went to our school to get an honorary diploma from our school? Yeah. How? Operational recognition. What is that? That's a program we set up that says that any local school district, regardless of where the veteran lived, local school district can grant a diploma to that veteran as long as you present 3 items of information. Okay? Proof of residence, New York State, his DD 214 or proof of service, and honorable discharge. That's all I need? Yeah. So in the last 5 years, we've done 39 diplomas in Grenada alone, but we did 12 other ones in communities like Ticonderoga, Peru, New York, way up north, Amsterdam, and 10 in Ichabod Crane. Well, wait, we weren't done there, because then we found out that after we got the veterans, their diplomas, many of them were posthumous, obviously, but it was closure for the family. Then, having the man's DD 214, we looked at, well, what are his federal medals? And we asked him, did he ever get his medals? No, it was too painful. He didn't want to apply for it. So we said, well, what if we could get them for you? Would you do it? So we found out we could apply to our congressman with a form, and they would check his records in St. Louis, and they would send the medals. Then we could get state medals that match the medals. So we've done over 100 medals for guys in our town alone. Probably 29 Purple Hearts in a lot of different communities. And this is all after the fact. I mean, we're going back, anywhere from 50 to 80 years to get these. And last year we got a diploma for a World War I veteran who would be 122 years old if he lived today. Wow. We got him his medal and we got him his diploma. And we gave that to his 91.
It means something to the family.
We gave that to his 91-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
And
it probably made her heart sing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then we find out about a place called the National Purple Heart Hall of Honor, which if you can prove he has a Purple Heart, you can enroll him. You just fill out a 2-page form, you can enroll him in Purple Heart. So we did every Korean War and Vietnam veteran in 11 different counties. Now, did we have time to call the families up? No. But there are records online that you can get which prove the existence of the Purple Heart. And we sent it down with our application. And just over 200 guys have gotten in, including 3 Medal of Honor winners who were never in, even though they won Medals of Honor. Yeah. So, and if you told me off the first diploma that it would evolve into all these other veterans things that we're doing, I'd have said no way. But it just kind of happened over time, because more and more people got your name. You started to get calls from people. We started to do tributes to people. We do a tribute at our Vietnam monument, put a new guy's name on the wall. We're doing 3 World War II guys this year on Memorial Day. 3 guys that lived in Green Island or had connection with Green Island, and they just vanished into history until my friend dug them out of a newspaper with their picture, their obituary, and everything. Then we were able to find family for those guys. So, it's like we're walking through history as we do our veterans things, and unearthing all these surprises that help to bring closure to families.
I really enjoy whenever I walk over to Green Island. I enjoy looking at all the veterans that are displayed up on the sign,
banners.
On the banners.
Yep.
And it just gives you it's just a small window, but it just kind of makes you feel good.
Yeah. In fact, I've heard people use this number before. We have over 307 people from Green Island who served across all the wars. Only 83 of them are on those banners.
That's not
Only
enough.
83.
Wow.
And that's because no one has taken the time to talk to families or, talk to somebody in the community that say, hey, if we could do this, but sometimes they can't find the records.
Right.
The records disappear. But to me, it's worth taking the opportunity to at least ask them, call them. Green Island, it's a very small community. It's a mile long and a half mile wide. Very easy to walk. You can go door to door.
Yeah.
Very easily, and not take up a lot of time. And we've done some of that work. We've sat in people's parlors. They pulled their papers out. Yeah, I never thought these papers meant anything.
I love walking through there because people, they know if you belong there or not. You'll get to like, hey, who's that guy?
Who's that new guy? Who's that new guy? And so going back into history, I often refer to it as we're chasing dinosaurs. But in the last year, we've gotten 2 guys Bronze Stars that never got them. They were never listed because they had another award that qualified them for Bronze Stars. And now we're going back to family 78 years later and say, hey, you know what? Your dad's going to get a Bronze Star. And we apply through our congressman's office, and they call him down to the office. They have a little ceremony with him down in the office. So it's I refer to it as earth-shattering work, but well worth doing.
I think
because
so.
You're changing
It's
families.
incredible.
Well,
Yeah.
it's great for the family, but also it's great for history. We need to remember these guys. Remember the sacrifices that they
that's
made.
what's like the biggest thing.
Thank you for saying.
I have such a the amount of respect I have is unbelievable. Like we have a very good friend that's a veteran that I have family that served. My uncle is on a banner over in East Greenbush and everything, but talking to one of our friends who the things that he went through, and he didn't lose his life, but he in a sense lost his life fighting for this country. Like the amount of things that he gave up, the opportunities that he gave up, everything that he gave up to fight for this country is absolutely incredible. And he's still here. He's a very good friend of mine, but he gave up so much to do that, and it's something that we should all,
including his personality.
Yes,
he's not the same guy.
He's a different person.
Yeah. And think about this for a moment, the impact of what we're able to do. And again, I emphasize the pronoun we, because I work with a 2-person team. We hardly ever meet together, but I can go. The one guy, he researches newspapers, and he just finds these people that nobody can, but they were there. The newspaper article verifies that they were there. And then from that, we go to my friend who does, she's real good with Ancestry.com. She looks up all their enrollment and enlistment records, okay? Then we go to school, and our school records in our own school go back to 1906. So then we can go into the school and say, hey, can you look this guy up and see if he ever graduated? And we have all the proof that we need to go into the school and say, hey, I'd like the board to approve this, a diploma for this guy. And the schools, no matter what school we worked with, whether it's up north in Peru or Ticonderoga, Hague, Ichabod Crane, our school, not one district person since we started this has ever said no to us. They said, how soon do you want this? It's a great thing for the community. It's a great thing for the school. It's a great thing for the family. But think about this for a moment. Now, I'm going to assume we all got our diplomas, our high school diplomas. Mm-hmm. But think about the social stigma back in those days. Like, you come home from war, you're celebrated, but the diploma is forgotten. You're too old. You've been through too much experience. You're a man now, not a boy. You can't go back and sit with teenage kids in a classroom.
And you're certainly not going to go take some test.
No.
You're just not going to.
Not only that, you're probably not going to go to a school function because you're worried about that one guy that's going to walk up to you when you're sitting with your wife and say, you know, Bill, I never remember you graduating. What year did you graduate? And you have to answer that question? Yeah. No. So there's a stigma that goes with it. And like you said, they gave up so much. That might have been another thing. They go, it would be nice to go back to a school dinner or something. And it was still in your mind. But these guys had no time. They come back. The factory system swallowed up a lot of them.
You got to work.
You got to work. You get married. You have kids. You got to send your kids to college or wherever you're going to send them. You got to be working. There's no time.
Yeah.
There's no time to go back. You know, that's why we're about to do a panel with 4 World War II veterans, ages 96 to 101, who were in World War II. All were in World War II. 3 in the European Theater of Operations, 1 in the Pacific Theater of Operations. These guys are still ready, willing, and able to talk to people, and they're going to put on a panel in at the Melvin Rhodes American Legion on May 11th from 10:30 to 12 o'clock, and we're going to follow with awards. And this is like our last chance to go back into history. We're lucky we found 4 guys, but they're really special guys. One still rides on a motorcycle.
That's awesome.
He goes to events with the Patriot Guards. So there's a TV station out to film the other day, riding on the back of a motorcycle, you know. There he was, 101. And he said he just signed up, or he just re-registered his car because he's 101. He's, well, probably going to have to re-register in 5 more years when I'm 106. That's his viewpoint of life. But think of the history we're going to get sitting at that meeting. You know, what was it like to live through the Great Depression? What lessons did you learn from the Great Depression that helped you deal with war? What was coming back to the United States like for you in war? These guys are going to be sitting in front of a bunch of Vietnam veterans who are going to be the audience.
Yep.
Well, we know what their experience was like, and it's going to be anything, you know, but they're here to hear this.
Yeah.
And as you alluded to a few minutes ago, John, we have a tendency to forget or put things behind us, but the goal is we have to remember what those sacrifices were so that it makes an impression on us that, hey, if these guys gave back, how can I give back in my community? And when you see those examples of how those guys came back and what they did, I use a pet expression, when they got back, they gave back. Well, I grew up in an era right after the war where I got to see what the give back was. And it left an impression on me. Hey, if I live in this town, I'm going to be here long term. I gotta give back too. We have to give back. So that's what drives the things we've done.
So the panel you mentioned just a moment ago,
yeah,
is that going to be aired?
We are going to film it ourselves. We had a TV station that was going to film for us, and we got bumped for 2 other stories that are coming up. So our backup plan was to film it ourselves.
Okay.
And then release
to get it out
film.
on some.
Yeah. But the one station was going to cover us. They're in the process of going to each of the guys' houses and interviewing them.
Oh, good.
And the girl who visited the guy that rode on a motorcycle, she really didn't believe that was going to happen. She was at his house for 3 hours. She couldn't following him down the road on a motorcycle, and all the stories he had to tell her when they went back to the house. So she's got 2 more interviews she has to do.
Okay, so everybody that listens to this, that this should be something they should watch for. Do you have any idea what channel that it could come out on?
Spectrum.
Okay.
But
Perfect.
Probably not till November. But they may send a camera crew over just to film what we're going to do with these guys.
Stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like they'll see them get awards. They're going to get medals that they don't know they're getting. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be special.
Good.
And we're going to have a special guest here. He's not going to be on the panel. He's 101 too. He's the last living Buffalo soldier to ever teach equestrian arts at West Point. The last living Buffalo. You know who the Buffalo soldiers were? Yeah. The last living one to teach at West Point. He might not be the last overall Buffalo soldier, but there aren't many left. And we have him right in Albany. We're going to introduce him as a special guest, if he can come.
That's incredible, too.
That'll be amazing to watch. I can't wait for this.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to have a lot of editing to do, like you guys do, and that's going to be a challenge. But so bits and pieces will go on probably before Memorial Day. But the bigger story, we've been promised a half-hour story by one outlet, the half-hour to an hour special that they're going to do, where they're going to bring in the film from our panel and what they filmed from the guys' houses, and they're going to have a group of young veterans sit and watch this, and then in the studio they're going to react to it.
Oh, that's awesome.
So there's a lesson going back and forth.
That's
and then
awesome.
We'll release it to schools if we can because it's a great history lesson.
Yeah.
From the guys that were there.
It's living. Yeah, it's living history.
Living
It's
history.
something
Yeah.
that you can. I don't want to say appreciate more, but it's tangible. It's in front of you. It's,
Exactly. I always make this statement because I was a social studies teacher. War is a 3-letter word we read in the textbook. We can't relate to it. We can't talk to somebody that routinely that lives in our community that can tell us about that. But now we're going to see 4 guys from different communities tell us about that.
Tom, please don't forget, because what I would like to do is update those release dates, and we'll put it on, at least have it on here so that people can access it.
Yeah,
later.
absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So my veterans work is carried through the last 5 years. I've been very busy with that, but very fortunate to be doing that because the extent of my experience with veterans was to say, thanks for your service when I saw them wearing a hat in a supermarket.
which is almost nothing.
Yeah. Now I can say, hey, we got some meaningful things done for some people who we know, and also people in 11 counties that we don't know and that we'll never meet. But their loved one is in the National Purple Heart Hall of Honor, which is the only Hall of Honor for Purple Heart recipients in the country, and it's in New York State. Yeah, so we feel good.
Can you give
that.
us that date again for this? It's going to be May 11th at the
May 11th at Melvin Rhodes.
Okay.
That's on 200 Columbia Turnpike. And let's see, it'll run from the men are arriving at 10, and we got to get them to see that we're going to do their biographies at 10:15. At 10:30 we start the questioning. We'll have them done probably by 11:45. Then we're going to do a presentation of awards to them that none of them know they're getting. This is going to be the beauty of it. It's going to be a complete surprise. And we'll have that done. We're following it with a luncheon, $15 per person. But then they're going to celebrate one of the guys. He just turned 100 in January, but we couldn't get into his facility to, celebrate with him. So since he's coming there, we're going to have a cake for him.
a nice birthday thing.
Sing happy birthday, yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So.
Wow.
And I think most of the stations will come to it because I gave them a program that we ran. It's got pictures, it's got their biographies. And when they look at that, they say, wow, these guys are interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, how could you not want to run a story
incredible.
on that?
Yeah. So, I think they'll have time to send somebody over. It's the way it's going to come across. They might save it for closer to Memorial Day and let it go then. But Spectrum, which is the main station we worked with on it because they said yes to us, that's going to be in November. And they just did the special on the Buffalo Soldier on February 18th. That ran for a full 5 minutes. And as you know, for a news story, 5 straight minutes of airtime, it's exceptional.
Yeah.
But we got that. It ran all day. All day.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we made some good connections with them. So,
wow, you had a mouthful there, Tom.
well, to go back, it was nonstop.
That's awesome.
But if you want to cut me off at any time,
Not at all. We
go back like this.
No, this is fantastic,
yeah.
and I'm sure that people that'll watch this are going to enjoy it as well.
Well, let me say some other things too about some other things we worked on. Like for instance, we learned through doing surveys at that intersection in Cohoes that in 1992 we were visited by the Albany County Traffic Safety Committee. And they said, Tom, we would like your SAD chapter to put together their own traffic safety program. Let's start with getting them to wear seatbelts. Because our teachers, our rate of seatbelt use in 1992 at the Cohoes schools was 33%.
Really?
Yeah, that was below the national average at that time. In 5 years, sitting out on a wall, handing out things at the basketball games, saturating the community with information. We got the rate up to 85% in 1995, and we got a national award from the National Traffic Safety Committee for our program, how we did it. We also got a Governor's Traffic Safety Committee award for 1995. We followed that in 1996 by getting it up to 90%. And in 1997, our top year, we had it up to 97%.
That's amazing.
Now, that was just the school.
Right.
So now we did surveys out in the community. I had kids do it as community service. They stayed along the highway. They'd have a seatbelt sign reminding people to wear seatbelts. And then we would log so many cars, like 400 cars in a survey. We're hitting 94%, which then was above the national average. So we went from well below to well above. And we got 3 national awards between 95 and 97 and 3 governor's traffic safety awards. No school's ever done that I know of. And that's because we were out there in the community where people could see us. We'd put our kids off to the side of the main road. They'd be holding the signs, and kid would be out there with his pad checking off the cars. Yes, no, yes, no.
Not only that, but those kids are going to wear their seatbelts.
Yes.
And their
Like
friends.
when they get older and they start
Yeah.
driving, and then
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of a story from literature. Remember the story of Tom Sawyer and the whitewash fence?
yes,
Where he got a lady to pay him to paint the fence,
Right.
but he wanted to go swimming, so he recruited all his friends to paint the fence.
Yeah.
He went swimming, and he got the money. So, the idea of passing it off to other people or delegating it to other people,
Yeah.
and letting them become involved. So, we had the elementary kids rolling the lollipops for us with the stickers. We had the kids at the basketball games, and outside, I was on the wall every day, and kids would come and sit with me, which made it even better because when you have a kid holding a sign,
people look.
they look, because they're looking at the kid that's in the back seat of their car. And have I been doing this? So there's a tremendous amount of awareness that goes with that. So, if you have an idea and you think it's a good idea, and safety is always a good idea. I mean, who can say no to
It's
safety?
these things now. Now it's turned to these. Everyone's staring at these while they're driving their freaking cars. It drives me nuts.
Now, I'm glad you talked about that because I'd like to share some ideas on that too. Back in, I think it was 2016, there was a lot of turbulence in my local school, a lot of friction between boys and girls. And I'm saying, what's all this friction, And I was seeing, and these girls would say, Mr. Mullins, my boyfriend just broke up with me. I said, where did it happen, in the hallway? No, he texted me. And I said, well, that's not honorable. So what I did is we had a sign made, and I said, we got to put honor back in to break it up, So I said, I got a sign made, and it shows a girl and a guy. They're both on the end of a message, and it says the sign was, texting, is it worth it? Now, I found an interesting thing. When I showed this sign to boys, they said, oh, that's 2 kids on a phone call. When I showed it to the girls, they looked at the girl's face. They said, she's on the end of a bad message. And they go, did you do this because we're breaking up with our boyfriends by text? I said, absolutely, that's why I did it. I says, you're tying up guidance all the time, and you're moaning and groaning about. And yeah, they were doing it. And little did I know, in 2012 when I retired, I only saw maybe three cell phones in my school.
Yeah.
Schools are full of them.
Oh, they're everywhere now.
And it's leading to bullying. Well, it's bullying's become a 24/7 process now because of cell phones.
Yeah.
You're laying in bed, a kid comes into school late. How come you're coming in late? Oh, it was until 3 o'clock last. I got a call from somebody saying somebody said this about me. And it's absorbing kids in the classrooms too. If schools don't have policies about this, they're mistaken because it is taking the focus away from the classroom because they want to be on it all the time.
And I think they're incredible. Like they're incredible tools. They're almost like things they're almost things that should be taught more because this thing holds all of the knowledge of the world on it. It's an incredible tool.
And they like it.
They're also poisonous.
Yeah.
They're also terrible for everybody.
You got you had that firsthand because of your age, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's something. Well, I was at the very beginning of it. I call it the very beginning. So I was like when it was first starting, when smartphones first started being a common thing in school. And I was terrible. I can openly say that I was using this all the time when I was in class and everything. I was terrible at it.
How about the hallway?
Oh, I was using it 24/7.
How about the bathroom?
24/7. Yeah.
How about the bathroom?
Yeah. And it's something. And now that I've gotten a little older and I'm trying to do like we've talked about before, I'm doing like a lifestyle change, a health lifestyle change.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to limit total screen time to about 2 hours, not just of my phone, but of like everything. I'm trying to limit screen time to 2 hours, and you just feel so much better when you're doing that, when you're not staring at this. Like this, the capabilities that it has is incredible, but it's a poison in a sense where it can consume you. And
you have to continue to use it as a tool,
right?
Tool, yeah. But
that's the one thing I haven't. My phone, for me, just because of how I grew up, and similar to you, like when you left the house, you disappeared.
Yeah.
Right. And I miss that to some degree, right? But my whole point is like recently I've had to start using a lot more apps, so I'm starting to look at my phone a lot more than I normally would have in the last 15, 20 years. And yeah, I'm at that point where it's like, it's too much sometimes.
And it's all the like social media and stuff and misinformation. Like it's a tool that has to be taken with a grain of salt as well, because anyone can put anything they want anywhere now. And it's things that, like, I almost think there should be classes in schools, like how to use this and how to look at, like, okay, this probably is not a reliable source of information that I'm looking at currently, or this is a reliable source of information, or because it's something that I've noticed a lot, and I know my fiance gets upset with me all the time because she'll watch like TikToks and Instagram, and she'll be like, "Did you see this? Did you see this? Did you see this?" And I'm like, I don't even think it's a real thing. Like, you're saying something that I don't think is a true thing that is happening in the world right now.
Can I ask you something? Because you guys have probably both done this many times. You take your wife out to dinner at a restaurant. Now, in an ideal situation, you're looking at one another, you're sipping a drink, you're eating your food, you're talking, right? It's not very much of a surprise to go to a restaurant now and somebody's there like this and somebody's there like this, and it's breaking off eye contact.
Personal connections.
Yeah.
More.
Kids today, at least what I'm seeing, because I volunteer at my school, so I'm walking the hallways all the time, looking into classes, is that a lot of the friction is because somebody in another class now has the capability of sending you a text in your class and getting you all upset. So now you want to run out the door and say, "Where are you going? I'm going to take care of this," right? And you're looking for that kid. Now, couple that with COVID, when kids were isolated anyways. Now they're running down one another 24/7. So didn't it make sense that when kids came back to school and transitioned back into regular classes, all that friction would come with them? Back in the old days, you settled it outside. I mean, you don't encourage people to beat one another, but those things got settled outside. Now they're festering in school because of all that communication that's going on, and it's distracting from the basic mission of the teacher, which is to teach a class that's fully glued into what you're doing. And we haven't had the Regents exam. Regents exams were done away with for 2 years, so there was no like final exam. Mm-hmm. Well, now the fiddler is played and everything's going to come to roost, and you just say, how many kids are going to really do well, because now they've lost whatever study habits they've had, and they're absorbed with this. But the other thing I'd like to say here too is that I in the summer I run a playground in Green Island for kids from like 4 to 16. Right, and I've been doing. I did it for 4 years in the '70s, and I came back in 2003, and I've been doing it ever since. Where I've seen it have an impact too is on how kids play, and their level of concentration when they play, and seeing kids going out for little league teams now, and a lot of them who are absorbed with this. The coordination's not there, the throwing skills aren't there, the batting skills, the catching skills. Kids are forgetting the joy of play. And when you think about play for a moment, you learn skills in play that you can apply later in life to running a corporation or running your own business or advertising, whatever. Those skills you learned at play, like negotiation, which everyone thinks, oh, there's no negotiation. Sure there is. Okay, you shoot first, I'll shoot second. They're losing that, the ability to do that. That's what scares me as an older adult looking back on all this. So that's an area that schools have to address. And a lot of people, they don't want to address it. They got a feeling they're going to get a lot of blowback from parents. So the situation doesn't change.
Well, it's an unfortunate thing, too, because not only is it a great tool, and it also is a terrible thing that kids use against each other. But gosh darn it, I just lost my train of thought.
Where are you going to politics?
I really wasn't.
We
No.
try not to.
Yeah, we try to stay away. We try to stay away from that as much as possible. Sorry, I totally lost my train of thought.
Can I mention a program that's now in place, Schoharie School District down in Cobblestone?
I love Schoharie.
My wife taught
It's a
there.
beautiful place.
Yeah,
Like the whole thing.
She taught there for 37 years. And what they did is they just finally said, we've got to deal with this issue head on. So they heard this company makes these bags. They're almost like aluminum type of bags, and they have a safety lock on them. And a kid puts his phone in the bag, and when he comes into school, they go through a magnetic locking system, and it locks them out of their bag. And the only way they can open their bag is to bring them back to the locking system, which they don't do till the end of the day. And they now have some information out. They started it last September, and they've asked the teachers to log things like, what's their attention span like? Do they seem to be paying attention in class? They've seen some monumental change with the kids. And the kids, they thought it was going to be a big rebellion with the kids, but it never really happened. So our district is looking into that thing. It's called a Yoder bag, just to keep kids away, because they've tried things like put them in your locker, put them in my box
It
here.
just doesn't work.
Sets up a confrontation because the
Yeah.
kid likes using it. You can't take this is mine. You can't take that. You know. So we have a committee going down there to take a to do some observation down there, and we're talking about possibly bringing it to Green Island. So
It's interesting.
we'll see.
Comedians started doing that at their shows
Did
because
they
it
really?
was because it it's been going on for quite a long
I
time
didn't know
now.
that.
But yeah, a lot of larger comedians in smaller venues, obviously you can't 1,200 phones in a larger venue. It's just not going to
Yeah.
work. But in the smaller venues, they started doing that because it was so distracting. Every 5 minutes, someone's phone's going off. You
Yeah.
can't do anything with that.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. I have a sister that is a STEM teacher, and there's no way that she could get anything done. No way.
And imagine this happening to you in a classroom. You're teaching. I don't care what the subject is. And a kid stops you in class and says, would you please be quiet? My mother's talking to me on the phone now. Mother calls her in class. What happened to calling the office and saying, can you call my daughter down? Instead of the kid telling the teacher, would you stop? Please, my mother's calling. Let me, this is a good point for me to share what I feel has been my biggest failure. I want to share this with you guys.
Cool.
And what I'm learning. Okay. This sign here, dignity first. Okay. The idea behind this was to take groups of kids and see if I could get them to send positive messages to somebody via their cell phone rather than the negative things that are going on. So I targeted 2 schools for this. I went to Shaker, where they had a sad club.
They have a big program there.
Well, they do.
Yeah.
And I worked with the guy, and I said, okay, well, this is going to be a hands-on lesson. All you take out your cell phones. This was after school. And I says, I want you to try to substitute a positive message for the negative messages you may be doing. And I said, and I hope the feedback you get from this will help you make a conscious decision to maybe use the phone more to build up people than to tend to tear them down. And I'm going to tell you what I learned from this. So they all went to dial their phones, and then they looked up at me and said, what would I say that's positive? I said, well, the first one we're going to do your mother first.
Yeah.
We call your mother first. Then your best friend, then a kid that's bullied, and then a kid is struggling in school. Yeah, but what could I say that's positive? See, they're thinking so much about the negative now that they're not they're scripted towards the negative.
Yeah.
So finally, this one girl, she goes, okay, I know what I'll say. She texts, Mom, I love you. I just wanted to tell you that. Her phone rang. Less than 30 seconds later, the mother texted her back, thank you. Now, what do you really want? So the mother thought she was being kind because her kid told her he loved her. I had another kid at another school, and this one kind of scared me. Told his dad he loved him. A minute later, the phone rings, or the phone pings, and he looks on there, and he goes, my father thinks I'm going to commit suicide.
Yeah, I was gonna say that would be.
Yeah,
honestly, that's one of the things that I thought. I had a really good friend. Which this goes to the thing. I had a really good friend at one point text me, like, "You're my brother. I'm glad we've been through everything we've been through together and all that stuff." And I texted him back, and I was like,
Yeah.
Are you okay?"
Yeah.
because that was honestly like it was one of my first thoughts too, and it's sad that that's a thought, like a first thought.
Yeah, that you're only receiving that message because there's some finality to it or something. Yeah,
right. Yeah, you're always looking for signs like that, giving away your possessions, things like that. But and on my ride home from that school, I stopped at this antique shop where this kid's mother worked, and I walked in. She said, "Oh, Mr. Mullins, how you doing? Oh, were you in Bryce's? Were you with Bryce after school today when he texted that thing to his father?" She says, "Yeah." It was quite the response from my husband, wasn't it? And I said, "Yeah, I know, but I said, but I learned two things from it. One, that the person on the other end is probably scripted and hearing more negative vibes than positive vibes, so it's very difficult to make that transition." And I would say to anybody, a good thing to do in a classroom with kids, write the word happy and angry on the board and say, "Hey guys, give me some words that you think of when you're happy." When you're done, you get about 3. When you get to the angry side, you got about 15. So our minds have seemed to transition into the negative more than the positive. And then, of course, if you loop it up to politics, you move it up to politics, you can see where a lot of this vitriol is coming from. Yeah. It can't be healthy for us.
No, there's no chance.
Everything is negative. Regardless of what side you're standing on, everything is negative.
Yeah. So even if we can't even have
a debate anymore. They don't even exist.
And I don't mind telling people that's my biggest failure. I couldn't get this off the ground. But maybe I was one guy walking into a tidal wave and thinking I can walk through that. I'll be okay. But like I said, I've been out of the classroom for 11 years since I retired, and it's all changed behind me. Would I want to go back, and could I teach the way I used to teach? No, and I had to deal with that. But I wouldn't allow it. That's the first thing I wouldn't. And you may call me old school for doing that. You can't have any distraction in a classroom that keeps kids from learning. Their focus has to be on learning. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to get our school, when they want to make changes to like cell phone policy, something like that, we say, now I'm going to do a dangerous concept here, okay?
We love it.
I said, use the word workplace, because when a kid, we're supposed to train kids how to function in a workplace. A school is a workplace, but people in schools don't call it a workplace. It is a workplace. It's got rules, performance, everything like that. So what I try to tell the kids, and this is probably the worst example I can use, but it does work. I said, when you go into a supermarket, you watch a kid ringing up customers, and then he's waiting for a customer. Is he on a cell phone? Is he on a cell phone? And the answer is no, they're not. But then I've seen other workplaces, which I will not mention by names, where everybody's doing this and then looking over here, looking over here. I think that the small business is probably the best place to use as an example. So what we did is we said, when kids come to the park to work, and they put their cell phones on top of the refrigerator, and that's where they stay. You got to take it out of their hands, because they're always going to go back to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's
a
like
little
a
break in
natural reflex now at this point. It's like it's like you grab it for anything. Half the time you pick it up and you don't even remember why you're picking it up.
We're sitting in a room with a kid one day talking to her about cell phone use, and her left hand was involuntarily dropping towards her pocket. She was looking at us, but the hand was going. And I said, "Is your cell phone in your left pocket?" "Yeah." "Do you know what you're doing right now? Your hand is going for the cell phone." But no, I mean, tools are tools, and if they're used with respect, that's fine. But I think this is a tool that's being abused.
Well, yes, but there's so many positive things that can come from it too. That's why I feel like they should be like taught how to be used correctly, because this is something that can literally connect the entire world.
Yes,
like cultures, people, everything.
I'm not denying it.
And it's incredible.
Yeah,
but it's also it's a distraction as well. That's why it's something that should really be taught to use. I think it's something that and I know my brother and sister-in-law, they have kids as well, and it's something, and they're very young, but there's something that they're trying to teach already, and it's something that parents should be teaching. Yeah. It's a tool. That's exactly what it is, and it's a super super incredible tool. But it's also something that can so easily consume everything.
I think the social studies teachers should teach it.
I don't use one. I don't use a cell phone.
Yeah.
Because as John will tell you, when I walk, I like to talk to people.
Mm-hmm.
And he
I don't
does
want somebody
too.
calling
I'm
me.
not.
I don't want
That's no
somebody
lie.
calling
That's
me.
a good point.
That's no lie.
Why do I need
Tom
to-
knows, because he doesn't have a cell phone. He knows almost everybody. When I walk down the street with you,
Yeah.
he knows 90% of the people we come by.
Yep.
Which is such valuable thing, because kind of to the point that I just made, this can connect the whole world, but it can also disconnect you from your own community.
Yeah.
Well, you know what, where I've seen a very positive effect of this. We've had an influx of people that have come from Brazil
Mm-hmm.
to Green Island, from Pakistan to Green Island, from the Ukraine to Green Island, and they all have cell phones, but they have the translator.
Yep.
So that when we try to greet people in their native language when they come to our school. We do pretty well, but we can't carry on conversation. But if it needs a conversation, they'll pull out their cell phone, they'll hit translator, and then you talk.
Mm-hmm.
That's very effective, because then they can have conversations with people at school.
I've been using it a ton at work, actually. We get a surprising amount of people that are not English speaking, and it's like you can just have full conversations with people.
Yeah,
that would normally you would never be able to have.
That's right.
And that is definitely a positive.
But how do we? I think that the challenge for us as a society is, how do we move people from the negative side to a positive side without disrupting education?
And that's a really good point that I don't think most people. I don't think that question is even, let alone answered. The question isn't posed.
Yeah.
I think it has to do with the way social media is, like the way those software programs are made. I think that a basic change there is what needs to happen.
Yeah, but what would it be?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not a software guy. And
why not, John? Think of a solution.
But
right
see, here's
now.
the thing: is like the way they make them now. It's almost like being at a casino,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
It's
They
almost
want
the same thing.
want as much information
Yes.
as quickly as it can go right into your brain.
Right.
Yep.
And addictive too.
Yes, yeah.
Addictive and instant gratification.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. And again, if you want to relate that back to addiction, a simple question you could ask a kid. Let's say you have a kid in front of you who's skipping classes all the time, always being found in the bathroom, has a smell of marijuana on him, falls asleep in class, and you confront him with that information in a school with his parents there, and you say, "This is what we're seeing. What is it?" He's, "Whoa, what are you saying? I get high or something at school?" Yeah, and but I'll be the guy in the room that'll ask the question, "Can you stop using?" And knee-jerk reaction, "Yes, I can." "Can you stay stopped?" "What do you mean by that?" "Can you stay stopped if I tell you to stop from today on not using it?" And I said, so I look at the people that are asking him the question, I say, "He likes this. You like to get high, don't you?" "Yeah, I do. Makes me feel good. Even though all this self-destruction is going on around you, you still feel good as long as I'm high." You're right at the problem there. How do you get people to give up something that they like?
Oh, they're using it as a crutch.
Yeah.
Because the rest of their life
that's
is
what it is.
a
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
But they like that. That's part of the problem of getting them
That's
to
a
put
good-
it down.
it's a- yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm.
I
don't know.
remember hearing in school, there was a
It's
school.
interesting.
Mm.
Yeah, there was a school in the Silicon Valley where the big tech companies are.
Yeah.
And it's one school in particular, the executives asked the school not to have any cell phone use in the school. And they do that. So if in some big tech schools, or schools that are in big tech country, if that's the message they're getting, don't let our kids use the cell phones in school, what does it tell you? Tells you they know something that you don't know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I feel like they should just meet it. I mean, I don't think you'll ever defeat it. Because,
No, you won't.
But
That's
I think
teaching is the.
well, teaching is huge, right?
Yeah.
But I also think that just the overall deterrent should be something more like, once you're in those hallways or in those classrooms or those places of learning, there should be something that just makes it you can't just. I mean, it just makes so you can't use it. Basically, it's a dead spot. That's what probably should happen.
yeah, but that would involve investments in technology
Yes.
to put that
Right.
that stuff in.
And there's not necessarily funding. Like
No.
there's not enough funding to begin with. So
Right.
it's interesting. That's my big thing for like everything. I think everything is useful. Almost everything is useful. Even things we see as like complete negatives.
Yeah.
They're useful if they're taught properly.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, We have to teach people. The community has to teach people. Parents have to teach people. Teachers can't teach everybody. They've got enough on their plate to begin with. They don't need to be teaching everyone other things.
And you also have the issue in some classrooms when you walk by them, the teacher's on her cell phone.
Yeah.
If the kids are doing they call it downtime in classrooms. I never understood what downtime was, but we work bell to bell. But you know, let's say the kids are doing a writing assignment. Now the teacher isn't staying there teaching, but they should be moving around. Sometimes they're not there.
Yep.
And the kids, well, my teacher uses it.
Yeah, well, it's,
Why tell me I can't?
Just a common thing.
But I come from a standpoint being a teacher, and that is that it's always a challenge to teach kids to grab their attention and hold on to their attention, and you have to use many and different ways to do that. But I always operate from this standpoint too, that if my mission is to educate you, then anything that gets in the way of that mission has to be dealt with.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So whether it's drugs coming in from outside the school into the school, because you know we also have the excuses from other people that don't want to deal with an issue like that, is to say, well, that's a parent problem. Parents got to take care of that. Yeah, but if it's coming into your school, it's causing kids to skip class, cut class, hide in a building someplace. It's got to be dealt with, because it all ends up in the vice principal's office. And if you ask a vice principal, well, what is your ideal job? Well, if I didn't have to process 60 referrals a day, I'd be up in the classroom.
Yeah.
Telling teachers, you know, hey, giving them tips for, you know, better instruction. Well, what keeps you from doing that? All the kids that are down here. Yeah. Well, if I could show you a way you could cut down the number of kids that come down here, would that be worth it to you? But they don't see it that way. They just kind of live with the problem. You know, well, this is my job. And I said, who would take a job like that? Would you take a job where your job description was punish 60 kids a day?
It's terrible, right? It's terrible.
It is. You can't get to do what you really want to do.
I have a lot of teachers in my family,
yep.
And I can't imagine what COVID did to all of that.
Yeah.
It must have just been like.
But there are always systemic problems in schools too that didn't always get dealt with, because well, we're not a drug treatment center. Right. No, you're not. You got drug treatment centers in your community. Right. Refer the kids out to it.
But I mean,
work with the parents and refer them out.
What I meant like by COVID is like it really pulled back the wool on how a lot of parents treat the public school system as just a babysitter, not some place where they send their kids to learn.
Yeah.
Because it's obvious. It's very obvious. If the kids are not learning at home good enough to be able to sit and have a productive day, that's the parents' fault.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't want to get into finger pointing, but the thing is if again it goes back to what kind of a culture do you want to have in your workplace?
We're all part of it too, though. That's
exactly.
The other part, because it's not
culture.
It isn't even just the parents. Like we're all making.
Well,
examples.
Of course, but it has to start someplace.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like,
but there's people that
my parents would have never, and I don't think
right.
your parents would have.
No,
ever.
my parents would never. My parents would kill me if they like. And I was on my phone. Like, I openly admit that I was using my phone in school. My parents would have killed me if they knew I was.
Yeah, if your dad walked in, he would have knocked your head right off.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like, not everyone has A, parents at all, and right. B, parents that are going to do those things. So it is like a community responsibility, because you don't want people in your community that are going to be morons.
Hell, retail is a community responsibility, isn't it?
We have plenty of stories today.
The amount of stories that we've had
today,
just in one day in retail, just trying to get kids to stay off their phones is unreal.
Yeah.
Well, there's something else. I mean, did you have any other stuff that you want to talk about today, Tom? That's kind of more related to anything coming up that you're working on, or?
Well, a couple of things, and that is that in Green Island at Heatley School, I used to be one of the few people that would be outside reading to kids, because I needed something to do after I retired. I didn't just want to sit in the house or just take walks. I still wanted to be involved, because I see these kids in the summer when they come to the playground. So I wanted to make sure that I had that relationship with them all year long, that I wasn't just the guy that they saw. So that's where I started standing in front of school. Well, now the SRO officer stands down there with me every day. And then there's a parent who's on the school board who stands there with me every day. We shake the kids' hands, we hug the kids. You know, we try to get them off to a positive start. And now we just hired a new principal. And he comes down. So now there's 4 of us.
That's awesome.
And we all share one thing. We're follically challenged, and that makes us top notch too, you know. But we joke, we have fun, we make a big deal out of the kids, and we say, you know, you guys came from different districts too, and you know that one of the things that you see in education is that elementary teachers are very nurturing. They walk you down the hallway to the bus, they pat your shoulder when you get on the bus, they're there waiting for you the next day. Middle school kids, not as much of it, and that's when kids really need the bonding. Yeah. And then you get to high school, it's like you're lucky if the coach is out there waiting for you. Yeah. But the thing is you have an enormous opportunity to create some positive change with 2 parts of your community at the same time. The parents that come to pick up their kids because they see what you're doing, and the kids that you know get buses home. We're not a big busing district, but when the buses pull up, and then you say, well, if you want to change the culture right there, your community and school at the same time, get out there with some kind of message. Have somebody go out there. Have kids volunteer like as part of a community service. Hey, would you go out there and hold my sign? They like holding signs.
The kids love the attention.
Oh yeah. So there's ways that you can expedite a positive change in your system, but you got to stay with it. You know, once you start with it, you can't walk away from it. Yeah. You got to stay with it. And but there's another opportunity too. And I read this from a book called, I'm going to recommend this book to both of you guys. It's called Passion for Excellence by Tom Peters. Now, it started out being a book on business people who ran exemplary workplaces. How they treated the guys on the line if they were making products. How they had they weren't in the ivory tower. They were down on the floor seeing how the product was made. They call it close to the customer, close to the worker. Okay? And in school districts, what you want are people who are visible and positive. And I'll give you one example of something that if they could do it in schools, this would be an enormous positive. Think about this. Think about you 2 guys are students at my school. I'm the principal. And there's this one hallway that all of you go down to no matter what part of the school you're going to. There's always this one place in your school where everybody has to walk through there every day. So this guy, who was 86 years old at the time he was running his school, it was a private school, he had all the kids' report cards out there on a table. And between classes, when the kids were in class, he'd look through and he'd pull out a kid's name, look at his report card. Wow, he's up 10 points in math. And puts it back. The kid comes down, he'd pick out maybe 6 kids he was going to say, Mike, remember last month we had that conversation about how, you know, your English score was down? You got it up 10 points, nice going. Pat on the back, let the kid go. What does that do for the kid? He says, that guy knows me. Out of all the kids that go, he knows me personally. He knows how I'm doing in classrooms, even though he's not in my classroom. Think about the enormous positivity you can have on every kid if you did something like that.
Or even in a workplace, you could do stuff like that.
That's huge at a workplace too.
Let me tell you what's really effective in a workplace. A handwritten thank you card. Not an email. A handwritten thank you card. I could show you guys where I've been, where I thank somebody, and I go back to that workplace three years later. The card I wrote is still hanging in their workplace in the cubicle. That's true. I've done this with police. I've done this with people in regular workplaces and state workplaces, things like that. So one year I said to my guys, and I'll finish with this story because I think it's a good way to finish. I had a conversation with my vice principal when he first arrived at school. I had a brown bag with me and it was squared. He probably thought it was beer, but I wouldn't be giving out beer in the school. So he said, what do you got in the bag? I said, well, I want to talk about this bag for a minute. I'm going to give you something that you can change the school with, if you're willing to do it. So I open it up, and he sees a box of thank you cards. And he says, what am I supposed to do with this? And I said, you got 65 teachers and 715 kids walking around this school. And I said, and if you're walking around in school too, you're going to see a lot of acts of kindness. See a lot of interactions that are with kids and teachers are very positive with teachers and teachers. You'll see it if you're out there looking for it. You can't miss it if you're there. So I was telling them 2 things. get out there. But remember, I'm only a teacher. He's my boss. He's going to evaluate me. Yeah, get out there. So here's a story that came out of that. One day, a fight broke out in the classroom. 2 big kids got into it. The teacher stepped between them. The teacher got knocked to the floor. Kids fell on the teacher, and they're still pounding one another. This kid jumped out of his desk. He separated 2 kids, got the teacher up off the floor, dusted them off, and says, "Why don't you get out of your office? I'll take care of this. I'll make sure they're all in their seats when you come back." So the guy went down, saw the nurse. He was banged up a bit. And so the teacher was asked, "Well, when you went down, how'd you get back up?" And he says, "This kid came out of nowhere and just pulled the 2 kids off me," but he was in his class. And this was a kid that always got in trouble at school. He had trouble every year he was in school. So principal or vice principal calls him down and thanks him for what he did. And he hands him a thank you card in an envelope. The kid goes home, and with his mother there, because the father was out of the picture, and her 5 kids, 4 of whom got in a lot of trouble during their school years too. He read the thank you. He said, "Mom, read this," and he read it, and he cried at the table. So he said, "I've never been thanked before for anything, never." So his sister comes into school next day. She was in my class, the at-risk kids, and she goes, "Mr. Mullins, I gotta go down and see Mr. So-and-so." That's Heather, come on, when you use that tone, something happened? No, just want to get out and talk to him. I said, "Okay, be professional." "But why would you go down and talk to him at 8 o'clock in the morning? School just started. I got something I got to take care of." She walked in, she sat down with him, and she told him flat out what it was like at their dinner table when Dan wrote that note. And she said, "I want to thank you." Now, there's a girl that's told him off many times. "I want to thank you for what you did for my brother, because nobody's ever done that for him before." And he called me down, and he says, "Now I understand why you gave me those cards." And I said, "Well, think about it. That was 1 card. You got 39 more in that box.
You got a lot of work to do, but
Think what you could do with
Yeah.
that." And so, getting people to do those little acts of kindness, those thank yous that they normally wouldn't get. We started a program in our school, the SRO officer and myself, where we have called the Act of Kindness Award. And what we do is when we see an act of kindness, he'll call me in, we'll both sign it, write it up, and we get down to the kids' classroom. Now, you can imagine how this comes across. You got a cop in full uniform and me. We knock on the door, "Can we see so-and-so out in the hallway with you as well?" Now they think this is trouble.
Uh-oh, yeah.
And then we say, "Hey, John, I want to thank you for what you did yesterday." "What'd I do?" "Remember that 3rd grader that ran out of his classroom because he was mad at everybody? And you calmed him down, and you walked him back to class and said, 'You can go back in there. It'll be okay.' You realize what that meant to that kid? That was the difference between a 3-day suspension and a kid going back to class and functioning for the rest of the day. And you did that. So we're here to thank you for that." And you hand them the award, and they look at you like, "Nobody does this. Nobody does this." Well, it shouldn't be nobody does this. It should be, we do this a lot.
Yeah.
We acknowledge it.
Yeah.
And it's just a simple way that speaks to the dignity, speaks to making a difference, and also speaks to being true to yourself. Hardest thing for kids to do in high school is walk through high school the whole 4 years and be true to themselves with all the forces that are pulling on them.
It's impossible.
Oh.
Yeah.
I didn't do that.
No,
no,
me neither.
I didn't either.
Yeah.
No way. No way.
But just little things like that, and it all adds up in a culture, because kids say, "Hey, it's okay to do something nice for somebody. I don't have to get a reward for it, but it's not bad to get an award. Not bad. 2 of those just come up to me and noticed it. It's the fact that you noticed it, and you reacted to it in a positive way. I think we need more of that.
I agree.
Schools do a good job with awards for like big groups of people, but sometimes if you're not out there watching what goes on in the hallways, there's a lot of acts of kindness. There
Like
really
little
are.
things that go a long way.
And those little things add up, as you know.
Yeah.
Because bad things add up too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Tom, replug what you May 11th and all that stuff. Replug that for us so that people can hear that.
Veterans panel, World War II veterans. We call them the Greatest Generation. At the Melbourne Roads, American Legion, 200 Columbia Turnpike, Rensselaer, New York. Program starts at 10. Panel will start at 10:30. till about 12 o'clock. Then we'll give awards, and then we'll be followed by a luncheon. And then that'll be the bulk of our day.
Perfect.
But the idea is to recognize these veterans as part of the greatest generation. And the thread that held them all together were three things. One is we see it. Surviving or living through the Great Depression, going through the obstacles that they had to go through to be there. Then war, what their transition was like, and how they gave back when they got back.
Awesome.
So it's a history lesson of all history lessons.
And, I almost feel we're going to have you back.
That's okay.
Because
we might have to.
No, we have to.
Yeah,
because
well,
the other thing about Tom that we didn't get through today is that he's an incredible sports guy, too.
Oh, we're having a little tease here?
Oh, yeah. We got to tease this a little bit. Because he talks sports, and he talks local sports like nobody else.
That's really
like
cool.
Nobody else.
Yeah, my friends always say, you forget where you were yesterday, but you tell me stuff that happened in 1962. How do you do that? I'll give you one of the great trivia questions of all time.
All right.
Okay.
See if we can answer it.
In a baseball game in 1975 between the Pittsburgh Pirates and the St. Louis Cardinals, two Pirates hitters who batted consecutively got their 2,000th hit in the same inning on consecutive pitches from this pitcher who happened to pitch in all 7 games of a series for Oakland.
This is your team.
Oakland.
Is one of them Stargell?
Nope. I'll give you their nicknames. Mad Dog and Cobra were the two players.
Oh, so Dave King. No.
Go ahead.
It's
he played for Oakland too.
Yeah, I know. It's Dave Henderson.
No, Dave Parker.
Parker. You're right.
And the other guy played third base, and he came over from the Cubs, and he was and these two guys were also the only two in the 70s, from 70 to 79, that won two batting champions each.
Amazing. And they were Pirates.
Well, you didn't name the second guy.
There's no way I'm going to.
Well, remember, the Pirates were called the Lumber Company in the 70s. So, come over, he's the third baseman. His nickname was Mad Dog. Came from the Cubs.
Who was he?
Bill Madlock.
Okay.
Now the pitcher.
I should have known the first
one.
I would have never guessed the second one.
I'll throw you with this one. The pitcher was a relief pitcher for Oakland. Pitched in all 7 games of World Series.
Well, yeah, that's got to be.
No.
Oh, it wasn't.
No.
Oh, okay. Then enlighten us.
It was his setup man.
Oh, okay. All right.
Left-hander.
Tell me.
Darryl Knowles.
I would have never guessed that.
You would never guess Darryl Knowles? He had a really.
Remember, I was born in '74, so I was only 1.
Oh.
Well, you should have been paying attention.
Right.
Yeah, shoot him back through your pirate books, and
I think this year, I'm not positive, but I'm pretty sure this year. Now I might be just saying misinformation. 2 Pirates batters hit back-to-back home runs in 2 separate innings in the same game this year.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Oh, this year?
Yeah.
That does not happen very often.
No.
Sometimes
I'm pretty sure
it does.
I know. I know 2 batters did
yeah.
it this year. I just don't know who it was. I think it was the Pirates.
Probably Jack Sawinski.
Maybe.
I don't
Could
know.
be a lesser-known name.
Yeah.
McCutcheon's back on the team, but Jack Sawinski and
he's actually producing really well this year too.
Yeah.
Oh, he's providing leadership too.
Yeah. That's huge. You and I talked
yes,
about
it
that.
is.
You and I talked about that on the way up. Yeah. Well, Tom, thank you so much.
You're
Seriously.
Thank you both for having me.
An honor to have you on here. I really appreciate it.
Well, at least I didn't dishonor my family, so that's
Not at all. I think you brought a lot of honor to our local communities and to yourself. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, and like I said, we'll keep on keeping on. We'll always find something that we can work on, because we go into our community with our eyes wide open. So,
all right.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks, guys.
See everybody next week.
Yep.